Greetings, everyone. This is Peter Diager. Mark Mullally won't be here tonight. This is our regular monthly webinar. Now, we've been doing now for about 3 years. It is a joint production of Diager and Company, that's me, and Interthink Consulting, that's Mark Mullally. He's not here tonight. He's doing something called work, something about making a living. I'm not quite sure how that concept works. Anyway, tonight's presentation is something I put together a couple of years ago just for PMI, Project Management Institute. Why? Because they were having me do webinars and presentations, and they wanted something that was 100% totally focused on project management. Now, since I'm no longer a project manager, I couldn't do any one of the PMBOK type stuff, so I pulled this book out, which has been on my bookshelf forever. Mythical Man Month was published by, or rather written by, Frederick and I actually contacted him directly, and I have his written permission to basically do an in-depth book review. It's not the entire book, it's just one component of the entire book, and taken from the title. So let's get started. Why this particular book? When I was in university back in the late 1970s, I had a growing library of technical books and computer-related topics around computing. I was studying computer science, and I figured that the best way to be a computer programmer was to learn everything I could from a technical perspective. And so I read things like Donald Knuth's. I read Computer Lib. I actually have a copy, a large tabletop book. And on the other side, I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, and then I have a large handbook of mathematical formulas and integrals and all the math stuff. And I'm reading all of this stuff, and my professors are telling me about computers is programming, and that's all it is, and this is all they're teaching us, how to program. And I know that programming can be used to write large systems. At the time, accounts payable and accounts receivable were the number one things being written. And I said, well, that's easy. Programming is easy. I know to program. I'm going to be able to go off and be a manager and help organizations put this stuff together and write them myself. And then I stumbled across this book, Mythical Man Month. And it's interesting because it took a totally different perspective on this whole task of programming systems. Now, when Frederick Brooks wrote this, he wrote it on his experiences from the OS 360, IBM's big operating system, that development cycle. So all of these stories are from a programming type project management scenario. That said, everything he writes about is applicable to managing any type of project. That's my belief anyway. Never had anybody contradict me on it. The book is, as you can see, more than, 35 years old, still relevant today, and is like several other books I'll mention towards the end, is going through a continuous series of reprints, anniversary editions. It's one of these books, along with other handful of books, that have made their mark in time and space and continue to be used. Now, what was fascinating about this was programming. This was managing programming systems from a people perspective. And it was this perspective that led me to believe that system development, project management, was going to be something fundamentally different than I'd been taught in university. It was a typical project, this OS 360, the precursor to the MVS system. All of the things that you've experienced as a project manager happened on this project, and then some. It was one of the largest projects at the time. It was the first really, really big programming project. And as you can imagine, with no prior experience, a lot of things went wrong. Some would argue that it never met the expectations for the product. Others would argue that it was one of the most important programming projects that we've ever embarked upon. Take your pick. Okay. In the book, the central idea, the idea that Frederick Brooks is known for, is this notion that there is something fundamentally wrong with how we perceive this concept of man months. Now, obviously, this was published in the 1975s. It isn't politically correct. Today, we would call it people months, or whatever we do. We wouldn't have the sexist man in there. I'm not going to worry about that for this entire project, this entire webinar. He made the assumption, he made the observation rather, that we do something really, really weird when we talk about man months. And basically what we do is we think that man months and people are interchangeable. In other words, if I have something that's 12 man-months, if I put one person on it, it's going to take me 12 months. And from there, I can go to the next step. If I put 2 people on it, it's going to take me 6 months. And we can go to the next step. If I put 3 people on it, it's going to take me 4 months. And we see absolutely no problem doing that. And he says embedded in that idea, that concept that we can divide people into man-months and end up with how long it's going to take us, is fundamentally wrong. Now, mathematically, of course, it's correct. Man-months divided by number of men gives you months, and that all seems to work out. But when it actually comes to doing it, when actually you take a 12 man-months project and you add 24 people on it and you think you can get it done in 2 months, something goes wrong. And basically, Brooks' law says if you put more people on a related project, you're going to make it worse. Okay, it's going to make it a lot worse. And there are some reasons for this. Now, we seem to have an intuitive grasp that it'll cause problems. And despite the intuitive grasp, though, we do this common sense thing of dividing by the number of people all the time. What he did was he looked at some of the mechanics of what is happening when you add people to a project and actually came up with some formulas, or suggested some formulas, that help us understand why tripling the number of people is a really, really, really bad idea, especially if the project's late already. Okay. Cook's law, one that I made up based upon a quote in the book, basically says this: look, food is going to take as long as it takes to make. An omelet, a 3-minute omelet, is going to take 3 minutes. It doesn't matter how many cooks you have in the kitchen, it's going to take 3 minutes. It doesn't matter if you turn up the heat, it's going to take 3 minutes. Or, if you take it off after 2 minutes, it'll be burnt on the outside, raw in the middle. Now, cooks and chefs seem to know this. You try and rush a good chef, and they'll, more than anything, they'll ignore you, or they'll throw you out of the restaurant. Basically, the concept is, if you want quality, it takes time, shut up, sit in your seat, and have a glass of wine. Okay. Chefs seem to know how to say no, something that project managers are still learning. Frederick Brooks was really, really proud of project management. He recognized that there's a lot of good stuff when you're a project manager. Basically, we're builders, we're creators. We are the people who take an idea on paper and we turn it into a reality. We shape things. We build things of value for an organization. We like working with things that are complex. Don't give a project manager a simple task. They want something big. They want it complex, complicated, because that's when they can demonstrate their prowess at getting the stuff done. So fundamentally, there's a lot of good stuff for a certain type of individual in the career of project management. Frederick Brooks recognizes that. And at the same time he recognizes that, he recognizes there's a whole bunch of stuff that really frustrate us as we become project managers, not the least of which is that we're not in control. One of my main topics, and you've heard me speak about the topic, is my primary focus is change management. And I speak about change management project managers a lot. The reality, though, is that the project manager is not in control of the change that they are inflicting. Typically, a project manager is told what to deliver. You will build a customer relationship management system, even if the organization is fully siloed and will never, ever buy into the concept of sharing data across silos. The project manager is mandated with the task of building that system. We get that. So we're not in control of our own destiny a lot of the time. We don't really set our own objectives. We are given resources. We don't have full control of our resources. We are given deadlines a lot of the time. Here's a project, we need it by January, get it done. Oh, you can only have 10 people. None of this is unusual in our business. So while we have great joy for what we do, there are a lot of complications. There are a lot of things that stand between us and achieving what it is we wish to achieve. Okay. Now, on top of all of this, and this is all good stuff so far, there is an observation that he makes is that more software projects That can be projects of any type. It's not just software projects. It applies to all projects. More software projects go awry because of lack of calendar time than any other part of the triangle. It's resources, time, specifications. Out of those three, we mess up on time more than anything else. In other words, projects are late more often than they don't meet specs or they are over budget. I believe that's still to be true. You could argue about being over on resources is the same as being late. Different topic, I guess, different discussion. And on top of all of this, on top of the joy that we have, the woes that we have, and this observation that we are always late, or late more often than not, there is this strange reality is that we are optimistic. In fact, we are incredibly optimistic. We are optimistic when there's no justification for being optimistic. There's really a coincidence here. In the June 6th issue of Time magazine, there is a great article on optimism. Let me read you one of the opening paragraphs from this. On average, we expect things to turn out better than they wind up being. People hugely underestimate their chances of getting divorced, losing their job, or being diagnosed with cancer. Expect their children to be extraordinarily gifted, envision themselves achieving more than their peers, and overestimate their likely lifespan, sometimes by 20 years or more. That is only missing, and we always underestimate the time it's going to take when we're planning a project. Even when we take that law of underestimating the time into account, we're still wrong. There's another great quote in the article, rather unusual for Time to have a sense of humor. Without a neural mechanism that generates unrealistic optimism, all human beings would be mildly depressed. I found that amusing, and it speaks to the heart of the issue. We have to be optimistic in order to get anything done, to be motivated to move ahead. If all of us project managers actually accepted this notion that no matter what we do, we're most likely going to be late in delivery, I think most of us would go out and shoot ourselves. It's a reality that is too dreadful to contemplate on a regular basis. We have to say we'll get it done on time, because if we don't, it's going to be late. It'll be late anyway, but we shouldn't be saying that right from the start. The reality is that we are always more optimistic than we should be. If I ask a room of 100 people, raise your hand if you think you're an above average driver, logic says only 50% of the room should raise their hands. The reality, good 70 to 80% of the people will raise their hands. Me, I know I'm better than average. Why? Because I've taken a couple of courses, skid control, accident courses, this, that, the other. See what I'm doing? I fall into the same optimism. Yes, I may have taken a course. That doesn't mean I'm better than average. Maybe because of the course, I take unnecessary risks. So we are optimistic. The optimism comes through in a couple of ways. Okay, we are incredibly bad at estimating how long a project will take. No matter how many times we've done it, no matter what methodologies we use, this is one of our overriding burdens. We're not good at this. And the reason we're not good at this is that every single time we embark on a new project, it is a new project. We haven't done it before. We really don't know how long it's going to take. If I ask you how long will it take to walk from your house to the grocery store, which is 3 miles away, you'll be able to tell me pretty accurately how long it's going to take. Why? Well, because you're walking, not much can get in your way. You know the climate, you know the terrain, and you're going to be able to do it. If I then ask you, say, okay, pick another place 3 miles away in your neighborhood. How long will it take you to walk there? And again, you're going to be very accurate. Why? Well, you know the terrain. You've walked in your neighborhood a lot. You know how to do this. If I plonk you down in the middle of the Amazon and put you on the riverbank and tell you that 3 miles away there is a hut and I want you to get there, you have no clue how long it's going to take you. Walking 3 miles in thick jungle could take you a full day. Depends upon the type of jungle. So when we are doing something, when we are embarking on a new project, we literally don't know the obstacles that we're going to find ahead of us. We have no idea. I live in a place called Brampton, Ontario. It is about 30 minutes if there is no traffic. In other words, if I leave at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll get downtown to Toronto in about 30 minutes. Okay, and that will be consistent if I'm leaving at 2 o'clock in the morning. But if I leave during the day, I have no idea how long it's going to take me. I've traveled it 1,000 times, but I have no clue. Why? Traffic. I have no idea how many idiots have wrapped themselves around the light post. I have no idea how many people have skidded off the road. I have no idea if construction is going to be there. Each time I travel to Toronto, it's a great adventure. Not quite traveling through the Amazon, but it's getting pretty close. So we're no good at estimating. And if we accept that, we can be a little bit more generous, if you want, with our estimates. It's better to overestimate than underestimate. My opinion, anyway. We confuse being busy or looking busy sometimes with actually getting something done. I used to be a middle manager, and one of my joys, one of the ways I managed well, is that I would quite often put my feet up on the desk, lean back, and close my eyes and think. My boss would come by, ask me what I'm doing. I would tell him I'm thinking, one of the most important things I do for a living. And he would say, no, but you have to look busy. We have this thing about looking busy. We confuse looking busy with actually making something happen. Sometimes you just got to think. Everybody who's designed large systems knows that the more time you spend up front thinking about the application, the project, the development, the more problems you're going to avoid. Not solve, but you're going to avoid right from the start. We confuse this working hard with making progress. Not as important as the first one. I've mentioned this already. We don't know how to say no. I'm an outsider to the project management world these days. There's no doubt about that. I don't make my living managing projects. I haven't managed a project per se in the last 20 or 30 years inside a corporate environment. I work individually. I have my own little projects, but I don't do it in a large context. I see a lot of people who do. I work with a lot of people who do. I consult with a lot of people who do. And the outsider's observation is that project managers are terrible at one thing. In addition to not being able to estimate, we're absolutely terrible when it comes to standing our ground and saying this is how long it's going to take. People will come to us with a task. I'll say us as project managers. People come to us with a task. They say you have X amount of resources. And they say, when can you get it done? And we tell them, based upon what you've told me, what I understand about the project, the capabilities of my people, upcoming holidays and all the rest, this is what I think we can deliver. And when we can deliver it. We're going to deliver it on December 1st. That gives me 8 months. And when management turns around, or the client turns around, or the marketing department turns around, or the stockholders turn around and say, no, we need it by the end of August. Quite often, my experience is that we bow down and we say, okay. We don't push back. We don't fight. We don't be like the chef and say, look, it's going to take 3 minutes. It's going to take 8 months. If you want it done sooner, it won't be as good. We don't do that. In my experience, if you have a contrary experience, let me know. But for the most part, generally throughout the industry, we cave in. And because we cave in, we reinforce the notion by the people who cause us to cave in that we're always going to cave in. So all they have to do is push. And they will push and push and push. Oh, and by the way, when we fail to deliver the product to specification, when we fail to finish the project as was expected, they forget entirely that they were the ones who demanded that it be brought in early. All they will remember, all they know, all that's in front of them is that you, the project manager, didn't deliver as you promised. So I suggest we all take some lessons from a local chef. Another problem that I think is prevalent, and I think this is the single point of failure when it comes to project management, and that is when we ask a team, where are you according to plan, the information we get back, we have no choice but to readily accept it. It is incredibly difficult with some of the projects that we work on, that we have in large organizations, to determine in a meeting how far along the planned schedule we really are. If you have someone sitting across from you, you say, yes, we are at checkpoint number 23, we're 100% complete, we're moving to the next checkpoint. How do we know that that's true? Or how do we know that it's true when they say we're 90% close, 90% done of this particular body of work? We don't know. Now, one of the things that acts against us aggravates this ignorance is this. People are very, very reluctant, for very, very good reasons, to admit when things are going wrong. Because we have environments in our organization, cultures of punishment, if you wish, where bad news is never, or rather rarely, readily accepted. It's not embraced. Don't bring me problems, bring me solutions is the mantra. I was doing a session, a large number of people in a management course. We had about 40 or 50 people in the room. And we got onto the topic of employee empowerment and how do you empower your people to make decisions. And we've been at it for about 10 minutes, and finally someone stood up at the back, and he was very, very frustrated. He was very, very aggravated, even a little bit angry. And he says, this is all nonsense. Employee empowerment does not work. It's a myth. You can't get it to happen in your organization. I said, what do you mean? He says, we've had an empowerment campaign project going on now for 5 years in our organization. And to this day, whenever someone wants to go to the washroom, they put up their hand. They ask permission for everything. If the printer runs out of ink and there's no ink in the supplies, they will not order it. If the photocopy machine breaks down, they do not automatically phone up the repairman and tell them to come in and fix the photocopy machine, and so on and so forth. And those are just some of the trivial examples he gave. So I then asked the next question, well, what do you do when someone makes a decision in your organization and it's the wrong decision? In other words, they make a mistake. And his response was very immediate, very quick, and even very, very cold. And he said, well, we fire them. You make a mistake in our organization, we don't tolerate mistakes. We don't allow our people to make things worse. We fire them. In our organizations, if we create a culture where bad news has a negative consequence to the person who's telling you, you can be rest assured, you can be guaranteed that sooner or later people will wise up and you'll stop getting the bad news that you so desperately need. I have an experience with that. Look, I speak for a living. I do these webinars. I ask for feedback. And what I get a lot is good feedback, and that's great. Good feedback is wonderful. The project is on time. That's great. We're doing very, very well. That's super. We're above expectations. Throughput is higher than that's all good. But it doesn't help me change course. If I get negative feedback, this isn't doing this. It takes longer to fill this form out than we really, really like. Peter, you're not speaking loudly enough. That's negative feedback. But it's not bad feedback. It's good feedback. With that feedback, I can make changes. I can modify my behavior. If a project is late, and we know it's late at the very, very, very first deadline, and it's a 3-year project, and the first deadline was 1 month in, and we're late, boy, tell me now, because it's going to be too late to tell me 1 month out from the end of the project that we're 2 years behind schedule. And every single one of us who's been a project manager for, let's say, more than 3 weeks has heard examples like that. Large project. You don't know that it's behind schedule until the very, very last stage. So we don't monitor status poorly, and we have a number of cultures in place that facilitate this poor monitoring. And then finally, the whole reason that Frederick got so excited about this topic was that very, very simply, when we fall behind, our solution is invariably to throw more people at it. Right now, as you listen to me, as I'm talking to, what have I got, 31 people, my guess is that there's at least 5 projects. I'm being very, very conservative right now. There's at least 5 projects as I'm speaking that are behind schedule, and the first solution that people come up with is throw more people at it. If it's X number of man-months, we throw more people, we can deliver it faster. And it's this very notion, point number 5, that justified Mr. Brooks to write his little book, which has become a classic. I'm just curious, you're all there, 31 of you. How many have read the book? Just type in yes, type in no, hit the enter key on the question thing. I'd appreciate that. Didn't ask that this morning. I thought I'd ask it now. Here's a very, very, wow, all these no's. Here's a very, very simple project management task. Okay. Here's some information you've been given. It takes 3 cats, pussy cats, a total of 3 minutes to snag 3 rats. Now that's a lot of information, and you can parse it though a number of different ways, and it's in those ways that's going to lead us into the first component, if you want, of the Mythical Man-Month concept. Okay, that's the information. Now here's a question. How many cats do you need to catch 100 rats, which are currently running around my room, in 100 minutes? I have a dinner party starting in 100 minutes, and I need all these rats captured. How many cats do I need? Now, most of you have done a little bit of math in your head real quick. After all, you're project managers. This is second nature to you, and you have come up with an answer. Well, maybe you've come up with a couple of answers. You need 33. Not quite. There's going to be one. You need 3. All depends, doesn't it? It all depends. One way is that it's going to take 3 cats, 100 minutes. 1 minute per rat. The way the cats are catching the mice is very, very simple. All 3 of them gang up on a rat, and they catch him in 1 minute. And then they turn their attention to rat number 2. And then they turn their attention to rat number 3. And in 3 minutes, bang, you have the 3 rats captured. And if we take that thought process and move it over to the question, hey, 3 cats will be able to take care of those 100 rats in 100 minutes. Bang, 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 bang. Just keep cycling through. But there's another way to do it. This time, the cats aren't collaborating. They're working independently of each other. One cat goes after a rat, and it takes him 3 minutes to tag him down. At the same time that project's working, there's another cat going after the other rat, and a third cat going after the third rat. 3 minutes, they're all taken down. Okay, but it would take 3 cats working under that structure. It'll take them 102 minutes to nail all the rats. It'll take 99 minutes to get 99 of them, but that one last rat is still running around. Then there's another problem, and that is how the cats work together to do this is important. Sometimes it's only a little important. Sometimes it's incredibly important. What if it took the 3 cats, let's say, do the math, 9 minutes to catch that mouse? And then someone comes in and takes their cat home for the night, and now we're left with 2 cats. How long does it take to catch the mouse? The rat. I need to change it to cats and mice. It sounds better. How long does it take 2 cats to catch that 1 rat? The thing is, you can't answer that question because this could be the situation. It might be a little Speedy Gonzales rat. And unless you have 3 to corner him, you can't get hold of him because he's always going to be able to sneak around. Now, obviously, this is sort of a little fairy tale scenario. But I can think of lots of situations in real life where you can't reduce the number of people and do it slower. You have to have X number of people to be able to complete the task. And lots of situations where if you increase the number of people, it isn't going to have any impact at all. Yes, in the book, he uses the classic, and everybody's heard of it, example of, look, I don't care how many people you throw on the job, but it's going to take a woman 9 months to finish her project of delivering a child. Doesn't matter how many more. That is a non-partitionable task. It's also not compressible by very, very much. Okay. Some tasks are non-partitionable. I'm a writer. I write articles. And it will take me anywhere from half an hour on a good day to a full day, 8 hours, to write an article of about 1,000 words. On a good day, I'll just zoom through. No big deal. Other days is going to be very, very hard slogging. I can guarantee you something. You put another person in the room to try and help me write this article, it's not going to work. If anything, it'll increase the time. It certainly will not shorten it. So there are certain tasks, even in your organizations, where certain things are going to take a certain amount of time. If you're in the construction business, you know this. It takes X number of days for concrete to set. There's nothing you can do to make it go faster. And that is a non-compressible aspect of your project. Doesn't matter how many people you have working on it, it's going to take that long. And until it's done, there's a dependency. Until it's done, you can't do the next stage. So there are non-partitionable tasks. Why is it so important that we mention it? Because we forget it when we talk about X number of man-months, and therefore I have Y number of people, and the time it's going to take is when we do this X divided by Y, that's when we make our mistake. We are ignoring some of the reality here. There are readily partitionable tasks. If I have a large baseball field, football field, cricket field, whatever, and I need to have it mowed, and I have one person, and the last time he mowed the full field, it took him 4 days. Well, I can cut that down to 2 days. I can get someone else on the job. He takes one half of the field. The other guy takes the other half of the field. I can put 3 people on it and cut the task down by 2/3. I can, for exact all the way down. I can put X number of people on that. And to a degree, the math works. Now, it falls apart right at the extreme. If I put 10,000 people on that field, they're just going to get in each other's way. You're never going to get it mowed. You'll have it trampled down, but you'll never get it mowed. If it takes me, 1 day to dig a hole, you may not of a certain size. If it's a really, really big hole, okay, you can get more people in the hole. If it's a really small hole, but it's got to go down 6 feet, and only one person can stand in the hole, there's nothing you can do by adding more people. We have tasks like that in all types of projects. So they are readily partitionable and non-partitionable at all. Then there are some other aspects. When you bring a new person onto a job, you have to train them what to do. You have to tell them what to do. There is a training component. And not only that, this isn't factored into this particular diagram. When you bring someone onto a project, what you have to do for a period of time is take someone off the project in order to train the new person to get them up to speed. While they are training them, you've actually lost productivity. Frederick Brooks isn't about that. It's not about that particular productivity loss. It's about something else, something we're going to get to right now. There is a communications burden, an interaction burden, when you add X number of people onto an assignment. Now, across the bottom of the graph, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 workers, etc., etc. Please, in the other 2 slides, it was sort of important. It was following the math, no big deal. Here, just ignore the numbers on the bottom. I am not suggesting that 5 is the break point. All I wanted to indicate is that you can add a couple of people and you will get a productivity increase, i.e. it will take a shorter length of time to do something. There is a number, which we don't know half the time, where if you add anybody else on, it'll actually take longer to complete the project. We don't know the exact shape of this graph because we don't know the type of interactions that you have on your particular project. But we know that there is a optimal level. And after that, it's not only the law of diminishing returns as you add people, but it actually gets worse. Okay. Now we're going to get into this funny little equation on the left-hand side. Where, in the name of all that is holy, does that come from? Well, it comes from a rather simple little concept. Every one of you have sat around a dinner table and you've had a toast and you've clinked glasses together. Now, when there's only 2 people at the table, this is a real short process. Clink, done. There's only one interaction. I'm going to clink my glass with yours and we're done. If we have 3, a little bit more complicated. Have you ever been at a table where there's 17 people? Half an hour later, you're still clinking glasses. Because you got to make sure you get everybody, you got to clink glasses with everybody. And that's where that formula comes from. Here's the one glass. Think of it as a solitary worker. There is no interactions at all. Everything's going on in my head. I don't have to debate with anybody. I don't have to communicate. I don't have to tell you what I'm doing. I'm working alone. I'm writing the article on my own. I'm writing the program on my own. Life is good. I'm a loner. I love working by myself. I don't have to have arguments. I don't have to convince anybody. Things are real easy. Okay. The moment I add someone else to the project, another person with a glass, now we have to clink, all of a sudden my number of interactions have, well, they've increased by infinity actually, from 0 to 1 in terms of percentage. But I've added one more interaction. We now have to coordinate our efforts. No big deal. So I added one person, and my number of interactions increased by 1. If I had another person, well, hold on a second, I went from 1 to 3 now. These 3 people interact with each other 3 different ways. The bottom 2, the left 2, the right 2. So far so good, no big deal. We can handle this. It starts getting interesting when we add the 4th person. All of a sudden now we have 6 interactions. Each one of those lines is an interaction. Now remember, it's not just an email going back and forth. This is not just one meeting. This is the coordinating work effort, making sure that we're all on the same page. Communicating in such a way that everybody understands what everybody else understands, and what they understand is what we wanted them to understand, if you can follow that. Communication is tough. We're not very, very good at it. I can guarantee you, I can give you a description of something, and I'll ask 10 different people to write down what I said, and we're going to get 10 different understandings. Anybody who's worked with a user knows that. You've worked with a client, and they tell you one thing. You understand it one way. You go off and you deliver what you think they asked for, and you come back to them and say, that's not what I wanted. This happens all the time. The more people we have on our project, the more complicated it gets. We add on a 5th person, all of a sudden we've gone from 6 to 10, and it gets worse and worse. If you take a team, 5 people, 10 interactions, and you add 5 more people onto that project, you've just increased the number of interactions, not twice, but by slightly more than a factor of 4. If you went from 10 to 20, that has increased even beyond that. I didn't do the math. You can sit down and do the math yourself. N indicates the number of people. N minus 1, exactly what it says, divide it all by 2. You can actually sit through and do it. Okay. Now, when we decide to throw more people on a project, we are faced with a reality. One of the first things we have to do is, okay, we got 5 more people on the project. Where are they going to work? What are they going to do? So we have to break our project up into the different tasks, if they are partitionable, the different slices now of the project, and say these 5 people are going to work here. Now, sometimes that means taking the people who were working on segment A, moving them onto segment B, taking the 5 new people, put them onto segment A, spend some time training them so that they understand what they're doing in this new piece, new to them. The people we move from A to B have to be trained on what they're supposed to be doing in B, and so on and so forth. That's the training cost. When we have the extra people on, we have to make sure now the lines of communication between everybody are working smoothly. So it takes time to slice it up. It then takes time to learn the different pieces that I've just said, and then it takes time to communicate back and forth what is going on. Now, if you're a project manager, you got 10 people working on a project, it's late, you determine that you need 20 people, you throw another people on, you have to take this into account. When we are deciding to go from 10 to 20, I would suggest that we don't take it into account. What we do is 10 into the number of man-months, 20 into the number of man-months. That's the math we're doing in our heads. And we're not adding on the burden of bringing extra people on. We're not factoring that into our thought process when we're extending the project in any way, shape, or form. And this is where we start making our big mistake. Project is late, throw more people on it. Here's a scenario that every one of you have seen. You're all a part of it. You've all done this stuff. It's a regenerative scheduling disaster. We have a 12-man-month project. We're going to be writing something. We're going to be building something. We've determined it's going to take 12 man-months. Great. We determined that we have 3 people that we can put on this project. And we do the math. 3 workers into a 12-worker project, a 12-worker month project. We do the math and we end up, hey, 4 months. This is going to take us 4 months. So what we then do is put together a schedule. Let's say it works out smoothly. We basically have 4 breakpoints, 4 deadlines, 4 markers in time. The end of month 1, the end of month 2, the end of month 3, the end of month 4, when we're done. Okay. Simple project. You've all worked on stuff like this. Then what happens, lo and behold, it took us 2 months to get to our first breakpoint. It should have taken us 1. It took us 2. It took us twice as long. Why? Who knows? Every one of you is thinking of a project where that exact same thing has happened. So now we have a problem. We're halfway towards our deadline. We have 2 months left to deliver a 4-month project. The first month took twice as long as we expected. The first deadline took twice as long as we expected. What do? We have a couple of options. These are all things that you've done. We sort of assume that, the first way is sort of assume that our project was properly estimated. In other words, we had 12 months worth of work. We've completed the first quarter of that. Yeah, it took us longer, but we've completed the first quarter of that, whatever that means. So we have 9 months of effort remaining. 3 from 12, 9 months. We have 2 months left. 2 into 9 gives us 4.5 people. We have 2 already. Throw another 3 onto the Barbie. Put 3 more people on the project. Bring it up to 5. Oh, sorry, another 2. What am I saying? Another 2 people onto the project. 2 onto the 3. Bring it up to 5. 5 into 9. Hey, we can get this done. Okay, that's one way. We've not quite doubled it. Another response is to go, oh my God, our project estimate was totally off. We didn't have 12 months. We actually had 24 months worth of work. We didn't realize it, but we did. We are now through 1 quarter of that. We have half the amount left. We have 18 months of effort left. We have 2 months left in time. So we need a total of 9 people, 2 into 18. So we had 6 more people to our original team of 3. We've gone from 3 people to 9 people. If you believe that that's all that's required, tripling the number of people, and now you'll be able to deliver it, you're making a mistake that not only novices make, but senior managers, mature managers throughout the eons of time have made time and time again. That's a problem. Going from 3 to 9, that's a communications problem. That's an interaction problem. There are other solutions to this. First, the best one, you go back to your client, your manager, your vendor, your marketing department, whoever it is, and you go, guys, we were wrong. We totally blew it. Our estimate was totally off. We need to relook at what we're doing. And we have a new deadline. And the deadline is not going to be 4 months. I don't know if the math is here correct now, but it's going to be 8 months out. It's going to be 16 months out. Whatever it is we decide it's going to be based upon what we know after the first 2 months of this project. Now, I have been a project manager. I know that going back to the client and saying our estimate was wrong, we need 2, 3, 4 times as much time as we thought, is not what we like to do. We'd rather just the project drag out and drag out and drag out, but we don't tell them as soon as we know. Why? There's a whole bunch of reasons. Number one reason is, boy, my God, if I tell you my estimate was wrong, you must think I'm incompetent. Well, I am, but that's not necessarily a negative thing. It means I'm not good at it. No one is, and that's what we're not willing to accept. But this is one response. Go back and come clean. Hey, guys, we're not good at this. We made a mistake. This is the actual real budget. If you want what you asked for, it's going to take this long. That's tough in most organizations, especially if you have a culture of shooting the messenger. So instead, we pretend. We pretend that we're going to deliver it on time, and we're actually late, and to my mind, that's even worse. There's another response. Trim the scope. You got 2 months left. Let's cut off everything you don't absolutely, totally, must, absolutely, critically have in that project. We will deliver the bare minimum, nothing more. That's all we can do. Really sorry, honest, don't fire me, but that's what we're going to do, trim the scope. We might be able to trim it down so that a single SWAT team, skunkworks, can deliver it in the time remaining if we trim it all the way back. Okay. There are no silver bullets to this problem. This is part of the process. It's hardwired in our heads. When I did the session this morning and I asked for questions at the end, I got about a dozen questions, and at least half of them were, why is it that we're no good at this? And why can't we estimate properly? Why do we believe that we can deliver things on time when experience says we can't? And the honest answer each and every time is because we're too optimistic. This is